All right, welcome everybody to the April 2023 InterReach webinar. I will first pause and ask if Christine or anybody else has any announcements before we introduce our speaker.
None from me, thanks.
Awesome. Well, feel free to put them in the chat throughout. And without any further delay, I will go ahead and introduce our speaker, Jeffrey T. Agnoli. He is from the Ohio State University. And there he leads as a senior liaison of strategic partnerships. He leads the Ohio Innovation Exchange, which he's going to tell us all about. I will just say that Jeff is such a great member of the InterReach community and other communities he is part of. Nordup Insights, he is always showing, characteristic curiosity, always asking for other people's input and ideas, and he's always showing incredible intellectual and time generosity. So I've learned so much from him. I'm sure a lot of other folks on this call have, and really looking forward to joining all of you and learning from him today. So thanks, Jeff. I'll pass it to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the introduction and the kind words. I'm just going to make sure that the slideshow starts, and then we'll go from there. So you're seeing my screen, right? Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay. Thanks, Christine, and thanks for the invitation. So this works out pretty well because I was just at the Expert Finder Systems Conference in Miami, Florida, last week. And this presentation I delivered for them, which is pretty much, I made a few tweaks for this group. But we were basically a community of practice that's trying to advance the utility of expert finder systems across the country. It was actually an international forum, so we had representation from the Americas as well as in Canada. And what I wanted to start with is how the Innovation Exchange got founded, and then how we use that tool to kind of advance industry partnerships, not just at Ohio State, but across the state of Ohio. So some of you know that I work with strategic doing, which starts with framing questions or appreciative questions. So back in 2015, this was the question we were asking, or were asked by the then governor of Ohio. Imagine if research innovation was made more transparent, more available to the public. How would that change the business and industry collaboration? What would that look like? And that is ultimately what we have accomplished now. The Innovation Exchange is simply that. If you want to check it out while we're talking, it's ohioinnovationexchange.org. Back in 2015, it was simply an idea. Could it be done? Was it feasible? What would it look like? We went live in 2018, and now we have over 10 universities with several waiting in the wings to join. It is provided as a public good for the state. It isn't just limited to the state of Ohio. As you can see in a minute, I'll show you a little heat map of what our traffic looks like. But we collect 3 buckets of data, our faculty experts from all our participating universities, primarily in the STEM disciplines, although we have some non-STEM disciplines represented. We also identify shared resources, equipment, facilities, and in our equipment collection, and then patents. The way that we organize our patent data is a little bit different because of just the infrastructure of it, but you can see here a map of the state of Ohio, and then a heat map showing the reach that the platform has. It certainly was thought in the beginning that it would be an Ohio-centric thing, but as you can see, the internet doesn't work that way. So we have traffic all over the world pretty much. And when you remove the Ohio hits, it's still a significant portion, more than the majority of the hits to our website are from all over. We're currently averaging over 12,000, sometimes as many as 20,000 page views a month. Folks stay on the site for quite a while. And the way that my job works is to look for ways to build partnerships to keep advancing the platform, build sustainability, and then ultimately serve the business and industry community. Yeah. Wanted to make sure I just saw it. Oh, thanks for putting the link in chat. So one thing that right off the bat, we do commission research studies to help guide our process. So at the time that we did this, there was a professor at Cleveland State University. Her name is Irina Landell. She is an economic development professor and did a study on what are best practices for creating innovation exchanges or expertise for systems for states. So at a high level, at the state level. She's just recently drafted and will publish a second study that talks about what are sustainability practices, like how do you keep these platforms alive and well, and how do you care and feed them so they keep growing. Irina is now a senior director of regional economic development up in the W.E. Upjohn Institute in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So she's kind of moved on. One of the key discoveries she found was that these tools are best when they're seen as a public good, meaning at no cost to the citizens. The Ohio Department of Higher Education is our sponsor. So they provide the funding for this platform, and it is their initiative that we are able to do what we do. We're looking for creative ways to collaborate. I'm going to get into some of those examples in a minute, between universities and industries, basically to advance research, innovation, and economic development. How we might be a little bit different than some other platforms. Many states run systems that are really about, well, not states, colleges and universities run systems that are really just about themselves, just about their faculty, their staff, their postdocs, and so on. And it isn't so much focused on external. It may be a public-facing site, but there isn't a coordinated effort to kind of engage with, let's say, industry, academics at other institutions, and so on. Our goal really is to push Ohio's innovation efforts beyond the state. And where possible, if people want to collaborate across institutions and stuff, that's great, but it isn't the focus. The primary focus is really about that business and industry needs. A couple of examples I'm going to walk you through, starting at the federal level. National Science Foundation established the TIP directorate back in just about a year ago now. So we're just over a year old. And all of that is focused on use-inspired and translational research. And a key phrase in their sort of founding documents is for everyone, everywhere. So it's not supposed to be about just urban centers or R1 institutions. It's really supposed to be about everybody. And one of the great things about the Innovation Exchange is it's a rising tide lifts all boats. It's not just about our R1 institutions in the state, it's about our small two-year colleges and so on. And we're working to lift everybody up so that they all have a voice, they all can be discoverable and accessible. With the creation of TIP, Congress passed the CHIPS and Science Act. And that's been significant because, as you'll see in a second, Ohio benefited from that particular legislation. NSF has been doing industry partnerships for decades and decades. It's now a formal part of their efforts. So there's this $50 million investment with several technology companies in the area of semiconductor design and manufacturing. Ohio announced a very large investment. It's the biggest economic development initiative in the state, $20 billion for 2 new fabrication facilities in the sort of the Columbus region. It's sort of centralized in the state. It will generate more than 3,000 jobs and create new research, new education, and new partnership opportunities for not just Ohio State, but for all universities across the state. In addition to that, Intel invested $50 million in a semiconductor education and research program. So they ran their own RFP, basically asking the researchers and educators across the state to design programs to grow our capacity for semiconductor education and research. The first round of funding was really successful. And one of the things we did was we asked our friends at Intel to partner with us on a series of workshops highlighting the faculty and staff that won those awards. And that link here will take you to the Department of Higher Ed where you can see those recordings. The whole idea there was to showcase the success that our faculty are having and what they're actually doing to advance semiconductor education and research. This gives you an idea of the reach across the state. The total spend is 17.7 million, but that's 8 different projects across the entire state. And the little dots on the map here are showing you all the different areas of the state that are going to benefit from that programming. This next slide gives you an idea of how many 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, technical colleges are involved in one particular grant up in the northeast corner of the state. So you can kind of see in the corner there, top right and top left, the Ohio TechNet label. This is a consortium of 2- and 4-year colleges that provide technical education, mostly in the manufacturing space. But what you're seeing there is a picture of Terry Burgess up at Lorain County Community College that led this effort. And she coordinated all of these campuses into one cohesive proposal. to basically advance semiconductor education. I would, if there was time, maybe there's time at the end, there's a great video here that describes the state of Ohio's effort around economic development. Our economic development agency is called Jobs Ohio, but I'm not gonna go ahead and play the video just yet unless somebody squawks, then I can try to do that. But Jobs Ohio is not it's not a government agency, it's not a state agency, it's an NGO. It works alongside state government, but separate and private. And there's a really good reason for that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that next. Part of the strategy for the state is they identified specific industry sectors where they want to grow innovation, research, and economic development. In other words, attract companies to the state. And so you're seeing a list here of all of those particular industry sectors. When those companies are considering relocating to Ohio and taking up residence, the process of doing that, if you know anything about economic development, is they have to disclose financial records about the health and welfare of their company. Traditional stuff like you do when you submit a proposal, but they have to give up a lot of information. Well, that creates a lot of anxiety because that information is then public because it's going to a state agency. Well, in Ohio, that's not how it's done. It goes to Jobs Ohio, which is private, and they can confidently assure those companies that it will remain confidential. And with that information, then Jobs Ohio can come back with incentives to motivate that company to choose to set up shop in the state, within the state. In addition to that kind of economic development efforts, Jobs Ohio has also invested funding to build 3 innovation districts. So many of your campuses may have innovation districts already, but we're going to have 3 across the state, each with a different focus and a direction. It's a $3 billion investment along with the university anchors that I'll show you in a minute. And each of these are strategically located in Cincinnati, which is one of our major urban centers. And the partners you can see here are the University of Cincinnati and Cincinnati Children's Hospital. Their focus is primarily square on sort of bio and health sciences. It's one of the strengths in that particular region. The next is the Columbus Innovation District. And so that the anchors are Ohio State and Nationwide Children's Hospital. And super excited to say that one of the facilities that will be in this innovation district is a proton therapy center, which is, I don't know how new of a tool it is, but it's one of the tools that are used to treat cancer and very successfully. And so that'll be something in the region that isn't currently available. And then the Cleveland Innovation District. Many folks know that the Cleveland Clinic has sort of a national and international reputation, along with their partners, Cleveland State, Case Western, and Metro Health and University Hospitals. So there's, again, a huge investment in that northwest part of the state to kind of grow. So economic development can obviously be about bringing companies to the region, but it can also be about real estate and space and building new facilities and services, research capacity, all that kind of stuff. In terms of higher education, the way that I have been building partnerships kind of goes first with our partner universities. You can see here a list from Case Western, Ohio State, Cincinnati, and OU. They were the first 4 founding members. And now we've added Akron, Cleveland State, Dayton, Northeast Ohio Medical University, the Supercomputer Center, which services the entire state of Ohio. And in the next few months, Kent State will join. And as I said before, there's probably like another 5 that are waiting in the wings that we're bringing on. So here's kind of a bit now about the case studies. And I want you to feel free to ask questions or come off mute if anything's unclear. I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but I want you to get an idea of how the tool itself facilitates collaboration and industry engagement. So beginning with the Tech Licensing Office, when companies inquire about a particular patent or a technology that they're interested in licensing, one of the first things they want to see are the publications associated with that research. Well, the Innovation Exchange provides access to all the publications a faculty member may have generated. It's updated in real time through the use of research identifiers like ORCID, Scopus IDs, Thomson Reuters IDs, that kind of stuff. But it makes it easy for companies to quickly view an article. They can download it if it's a public access article, or they have the DOI and they can access it. But that gives the licensing officers a quick way to kind of distribute information about both a patent, a licensing, and the research and the lab that was going on there. I am embedded with the corporate partnership team at Ohio State. And so our primary function is to engage with business and industry and help them make a match to either individual faculty members, department, colleges, and or student efforts. And so I'm just highlighting one example here, and that most companies, when they start a partnership with the university, they're interested in our number one talent, that being our student, our number one product. And here's an example of a sort of a sub list of all the different ways that we talk about talent and workforce development. Most people think of career fairs, internships, but it's way broader than that. It includes companies coming in and participating in seminars or conferences or forums, or even hosting or sponsoring those. They might lead a learning community. In the case of semiconductor education, that's not something that many of our institutions were teaching. I think Case Western was one of the leaders in that space. Ohio State had a program too in nanotechnology, but it's generally a new concept. So there are ways to kind of engage with that. Student organizations, they can become guest lecturers. A business or industry rep can come to a class and speak. There are capstone programs, mentoring. We have experiential programs like Hack Ohio, where students are given the chance to participate in the hackathon and win prizes, and of course scholarships and stuff. So it just gives you a range of all the different ways a company can engage. And so our first intake process with a company is, what are your goals? What are you trying to get out of this relationship? And let's introduce you to all the different ways that you can do that. It doesn't have to be the traditional career fair or internship route. In terms of economic development, there's many projects going on across the state, and I'll showcase a couple of them a little bit later. But those are building new buildings, creating new jobs, welcoming new industries to the state, and facilitating the potential research partners that come out about that. One of the things I'm really proud about is the research news and communication. So this is that second column. We partnered with our research media relations office, and when they push stories about research and innovation, we asked them to link to the faculty member's profile in the innovation exchange. So that drives more traffic. The public can engage with those faculty in new and interesting ways because they can see a lot more depth about them. But it lifts up the institution, lifts up the researcher, and it also helps with discovery. Of course, everybody on this call is often engaged in proposal teams, and the tool itself is one of the ways that you can build an interdisciplinary team, because you have access to faculty not only at your institution but across the state that might have a particular strength in an area, a research area, so they can be brought into the process. So I'm not going to go through all the rest of these, but you get the idea. So one of the other projects that I've been a part of, I feel like I jumped ahead. There we go. I've been happy to participate in rethinking or reimagining the role of an industry advisory board. So you may or may not interact with these groups, but often colleges and departments, centers, institutes, and so on will have external industry advisory boards. And those individuals' role and function often can range from just like being updated on what the center institute's doing, just like almost like an information exchange one way from the university to the industry, all the way up to philanthropy, to helping fund or endow a professorship and that kind of stuff. Well, what we're trying to do through this grant from the Kern Family Foundation is to show people how to use strategic doing. And I've talked to this group before about that particular strategy discipline, but how to use that discipline to unlock what's possible with industry advisory boards, to kind of plan a strategic approach to how that industry advisory board is going to support the department, the college, or the research institute or center. It's much more intentional. It's much more of a win-win. So the industry members are there. They're not just there just to hear what we're doing, but they're there to help guide the direction of education, curriculum, funding, scholarships, programs, and that kind of stuff. And you can follow the links here to see more about that if you're not familiar with Kern. So it's Kern Family Foundation. There's a couple of Ks here. I just wanted to clarify. And then it's also the Kern Entrepreneurial Engineering Network, known as KEEN. And so those are two things you can check out. Another way that we showcase what's going on across the state is by looking at top viewed profiles. We absolutely believe that social media influence is a strategy. It's a way to lift up what's going on in science and education and research across the entire state. So here are 4 examples of people, and I think they're just great stories in and of themselves. So I wanted to take a minute to explain that. So on the left there is Marjorie Aaron. She's a professor of law at the University of Cincinnati, professor of practice. She actually put out a free course on client interviewing that's not only used by law students, but by law educators and law practices. It was so popular that she actually was approached by some companies outside the US that were very interested in what she was doing, and they together developed an artificial intelligence tool to kind of facilitate that education and the way that tool can be used. Second is Pravin Kamaya, who's a professor in our Comprehensive Cancer Center. He's not only developed technologies in the area of cancer vaccines for treatment, but also for cure. So he's developed vaccines that are curing cancer. 7 of his patents were licensed by one particular company, and they're in the process of being brought to the marketplace. Really dramatic stuff. It doesn't work for everyone, but these would be cures for cancer, not just treatments. Third is Professor Cheryl Justice in the College of Nursing. She was very active during the pandemic with a webinar series. Her area of research is urinary tract infection care, treatment, and education. So very comprehensive. And because this webinar series was so popular, people were looking up her profile, and she probably had the highest number of profiles during that time period. And there were several other faculty that were doing this kind of online stuff and got lots of hits for their profile. But she's gotten industry grants, grants to help train the next generation of researchers in that space and scholars. So really awesome application. And then last but not least is Dr. Timothy Pritz from University of Cincinnati. Some of you may remember back in January when the NFL player Damar Hamlin collapsed on the field in cardiac arrest. Dr. Pritz was the physician treating him in the sort of the emergency setting in the hospital. And when his profile and when he did press releases, his profile kind of lit up, and there was lots of interest all over the place to kind of see what he was up to. He's an interesting researcher because he's not just a clinician, he's also a scholar. And so he probably wasn't getting a lot of interest, but when that situation happened, and thank goodness it all came out for the best. So we regularly sort of scour our analytics to see whose profiles are getting attention. And most of the times it's for really good reasons. These are a couple other posts where we grabbed all of the AAAS fellows across the state, again, from our participating universities. We profiled them to kind of advance science and promote it. And then most recently on 60 Minutes was a professor at Case Western Reserve, that's Dustin Tyler, who's developed a device that allows people with disabilities to actually experience touch and sensation again. So pretty remarkable stuff, and the public is really interested in that. Another way that we're building partnerships is with trade associations. It surprised me to learn that in the state of Ohio, there's over 200 different trade associations, all headquartered in the state. We identify those that make sense, and I'll talk about them in a minute. We also work with state agencies, NGOs, and then of course, professional associations. So what you're seeing here is a list of trade associations that are very obvious and align well with what we're trying to do, helping connect them to our faculty and our research programs, as well as to kind of drive interest in particular areas. So OhioX is one of the newest ones that was born during the pandemic. They are trying to build Ohio as a place to come for technology. So really advocating for the technology community. They hold summits, they hold retreats, they hold legislator days, and they help partner with us on our webinar series so that we could get the word out to the community across the state. Ohio Life Sciences is our biotechnology community across the state. And then some of you may know that Ohio has always been one of the big manufacturing states. I think we're in the top 5 nationally. And so there's a whole ecosystem of manufacturing associations that support that and drive connections, both research and education. On the state agency side, obviously our executive sponsor is the Ohio Department of Higher Ed. So we work very closely with them and their particular agenda and what they want to get accomplished. We also work with the Ohio Department of Development, Commerce, and with the governor's office, specific initiatives that might be being pushed, like workforce transformation, Innovate Ohio, and the Ohio IP Promise. On the non-government side, Jobs Ohio, I mentioned earlier, that's the economic development organization, works along with state government, but private. Parallax is another kind of government contractor, and we partner with them. In fact, we're working with them right now to develop a matchmaking program where companies can describe a technology or skill set that they're looking for, and academics can anonymously reply that they might be interested. If there's a match made, we follow them to see where it goes and track the outcome. Ohio Aerospace Institute is really about workforce development in that particular space, and just kind of foreshadowing, it's going to be important when I get to the next few slides, because you'll see how that's another growth area for Ohio. And then I love this Ohio Hemp Company. It's a startup located in Ohio. It isn't just agriculture. There's application for hemp in so many industries, from carbon sequestration to concrete to batteries, electric vehicles, nutraceuticals. And so they're trying to do field trials and cultivar trials to see what grows best in the state, and does that particular cultivar express the traits that we need for different kinds of industry applications. And so when those requests come in, we turf them out to the logical people that might be interested, but then also we just share it generally with the offices of research at all our participating campuses. So Christine already said that I've been an active member of NORDUP. I've also been active recently in the University Industry Demonstration Partnership. UIDP is another group. In Europe, there's the UIIN, and then Autumn is the group for technology managers. All of these organizations are ways that we communicate our message, and also try to showcase, just like we're doing today, how we use the tool to build research and innovation. So last but not least, and hopefully I get a chance for all of you to ask some questions, is new and emerging state initiatives. Some of you might laugh when I say this, but in my experience, it's the shiny object that seems to get the attention at the university. So meaning an existing center institute, once they're up and running, they're kind of on autopilot. But the new initiatives are the things that seem to get a lot of attention. And so the Innovation Exchange has been asked to help out with a new program across the state of Ohio known as Advanced Air Mobility. And if this picture looks a little bit like the Jetsons, it's because I think that's what we're headed towards. There are many aviation facilities across the state of Ohio already. We're also known as the birthplace of innovation, with Orville and Wilbur Wright being from Ohio. And also a fun fact, if you ever fly through the Columbus airport, Jerry Mack is, there's a statue of her. She was a housewife in my community that I actually live in back in the 50s that circumnavigated the entire globe. And she did it solo. And she was the first woman to ever do that. And she's kind of a celebrity, and she's featured at the Ohio airport to kind of showcase her motivation. When asked why she did it, she said, "I did it because I wanted to inspire others to kind of go after their goals." Pretty cool stuff. But if you don't know what advanced air mobility is about, it's really about moving things from any part of the state, rural to urban, urban to rural. It could be people, cargo, it could be healthcare, tissues, samples, organs, all that kind of stuff. I think in the city of Chicago, recently there was announced a new air taxi that's going to run from downtown Chicago to directly to the airport. So there's going to be tremendous new ways that people move, and it isn't just going to be about flights from one state to another, but just within regions. And the technology with drones and some autonomous and electric vehicle aircraft, it's just a really huge opportunity. Jobs Ohio is projecting that this will be a $13 billion with a B economic impact in the state of Ohio by 2045. I've been asked by one of the early steering groups for this initiative to be the subject matter expert on how to index and curate all the resources that exist across higher education in this space. So that's faculty experts, shared equipment, facilities, services, and then of course the patent opportunities. There have been several large grants won, both in the Department of Defense Air Force Research Lab, which is also based in Ohio, and then initiatives in the healthcare sector about moving patients, materials, organs, tissues, all of that like. This gives you a breakdown again across the state of all the different initiatives that are happening in aviation and aeronautics. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, if you know the state at all, is just due west of Columbus, the center of the state, and a little bit south. It's sort of north of Cincinnati and I guess west of Columbus. Another last couple things here. The new space station, the International Space Station, will be deployed in the next coming years. The current one is going to be taken offline. Ohio State won a economic development project to basically be the analog, the terrestrial analog for all experiments that will be run in the space station. So if a company wants to try something out in the space station, they first have to prove it at Ohio State's campus in this new facility known as the George Washington Carver Science Park. It has many companies that are affiliated with it. In fact, the first sort of area of research focus is going to be about growing things in space. And so our College of Agriculture will be very involved in both designing experiments and testing them on the ground, and then ultimately moving them up to space. This bubble or inflatable habitat will have enough room for 4 astronauts to live long-term. And so we can't obviously pack everything up and send them all the food they need. There's going to need to be a way for them to grow food while they're in space. This last slide will show some of the companies and universities that are already involved. Voyager, sort of the parent company, Voyager Space. Nanorox is the organization helping build. And then there's several other companies that will obviously be subcontractors and suppliers to the International Space Station and work out of this George Washington Carver Science Park. So to kind of wrap up and then hopefully open this up for some chat. When we talk about partnerships and ways to engage, we talk about it along a continuum. So from the most obvious is the career fair, internships, co-ops kind of thing. Again, companies are most interested in our #1 asset, that's our students. From there, we engage them in conversations about, that I'm glad this worked for you. Are you interested in perhaps funding some research or providing other opportunities for students to engage in innovation to kind of support the direction of your company? Many companies are, not all of them are, but if they are interested in more than just our students, we put them in this continuum. It's all about a win-win. They don't do anything they don't want to do. We also talked to them about shared equipment, resources. We even had a situation where a company came to us and said, we want this piece of equipment. We want your students to be trained on it, but we don't want to own it. We don't want to manage it. Would you be willing to lease it from us? You can own it on your campus, use it for research, train students, and we'll pay for it at the front end, and then you can pay us back over time. So it's a really interesting model there. Also, obviously, we want to move our technology and licensing out into the public where it can do some good. So we're always making companies aware of licensable opportunities that might help their business, help them be more competitive or help them be more efficient. And then ultimately, as you move along this continuum, the goal really is to get to a strategic partnership where the company is kind of helping craft the direction for Ohio State, and Ohio State is helping to partner with the company to kind of deliver that. And I think one of the standards that I always like to use is if you think a lot about community colleges, community is their middle name, and it's because they do what the community needs are. They identify those, they work with local businesses, and they adjust their curriculum and their programming accordingly. So hopefully that gives you a great overview of all the different ways that you can partner with industry. I'd be happy to answer questions and delve in. Just trying not to talk the whole time, so I think I did pretty good. It's just 12:37.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's excellent. I really hope everybody feels free to unmute and ask questions. I just have a starter one that came to mind during the talk, and I liked your talking about the advisory boards, the industry advisory boards, and I'm just curious from your perspective. You did a great job of framing, what's in it for them throughout. So they're really interested in the students, or what they're getting out of it. With the advisory board participation, I guess it's a two-part question. One, if you have insight on what the industry partners see themselves as getting out of participation on that board. And the second kind of corollary question is, do you think that given what they're getting out of it, is it important for them to be in a board made up of only industry, or would you imagine that it could also work for them to be in a multi-stakeholder, non-academic advisory board? So I'll leave it there and see what you think.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic questions. What I would say is, it's a continuum, right? So some industry advisory boards are highly engaged and have a really active role and voice in what is going on. And others are just there, to be honest, they're like assigned by the company to be on an industry advisory board. So they're kind of voluntold to participate. They might be there to contribute some money, like internships, scholarships, maybe sponsor some capstone seminars, that kind of stuff. But it tends to be kind of the same things, and they do the same programs year after year. What this initiative, this Project Unlock, is trying to do is really transform them into helping the college develop entrepreneurial mindsets for the students. So it could be at the department level, the college level, or the center institute level. Sometimes, I don't know about your campus, but it could be an academic leader who's brought all their colleagues, friends, former associates, people they collaborate with on grants, and that's who the advisory board is. So it's a conscious effort to say, let's have a conversation about what would be strategic, and what's the future look like for your company, where you're going, how can we help you innovate and get there? And does that mean changes to our curriculum? Does that mean changes to the way we do things? I think the second part of your question was mixing it up with, not just industry folks. And I think that'd be great. I think the more diverse, the better. Yeah. Lots of times it's faculty and staff in the college, and then industry reps. And like I said, the more common scenario, if you ask on your campus, you may get the same answer, is it's come and hear all the great things we're doing, and then they go away. It's one way, right? It's just the university kind of bragging about everything that they're doing, which is great. It has a place, but it's not a strategic conversation about where we should be moving. Good. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I bet you're also seeing that Anne Savell it has a question in the chat.
I see that. Yeah. Strategies for researchers in social sciences, right? Human resources. That's so great that you asked that, because I'm working with our Center for Human Resources Research, and they do research with the National Bureau of Labor and Statistics. They have for like 55 years. And they're beginning to have a conversation about what would it look like if we worked with corporations, right? I'll give you a concrete example. My department is the broader department that I'm a part of. So it's part of the Office of Research, but the subunit is Innovation and Economic Development. And as a community, we've decided that diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that we're programming about. We're doing initiatives, but one of the things they wanted to do was a quick climate survey. And so they reached out to the Center for Human Resources Research, who are known for building surveys. And they're going to design an in-house climate survey to kind of give us a baseline of where we're at. And I know for a fact that many companies are very interested in the same sort of thing. Companies do come to us, obviously, for our students, but sometimes they have very specific, like recruiting underrepresented folks or mentoring programs, different kinds of things that they want to do. So your question is really great in terms of like wellness and low income or underutilized communities, that kind of stuff. It would definitely be, I guess my answer would be, whatever the company wants, we're going to help them find the best partner at Ohio State to get that done. And if it isn't Ohio State, we'll refer them beyond, but that's kind of the way that we engage with companies. It's about tell us what your needs are, and we'll give you examples of how other companies are working with us, and that might help them see what's possible. A lot of times they just think about graduates, right? They think about enrollment. Are you graduating X number of students in a particular field? Will I have the capacity to hire them in the future? So if I didn't answer any of that, please feel free to.
Thank you. No, that's very helpful.
Okay. I'd be curious for all of you. I have a question. Do you know if your campuses have an office of corporate partnerships? So let me just distinguish that from corporate philanthropy. So it's at Ohio State, those are two different things. I'm talking about a corporate partnership where we help match up the needs of a company with what the university might be able to provide. I see Christine nodding. Yes, okay, yeah. Appalachian State does not, okay. Andre, you just came off, or you came on camera, so maybe you want to say something.
No, I actually wanted to ask, do you, and then you may have said this and I missed it, do you work with all size companies or is it really larger companies that you focus on?
It's a really good question. So I would say that the goal is to work with high dollar strategic partnerships. So certain dollar threshold is sort of the goal and a strategic kind of direction. So if I don't know, let's say if I don't want to pick on any business. So let's say a small business came to us with very few employees. We would absolutely help them get connected to the resources they need, but we might not, they may not have the resources nor the interest in moving along that continuum to like a strategic partnership, right? Because give you a great example, Honda has had a 20-year history with Ohio State. It's probably our oldest and most successful corporate partnership. They build the Honda Accord not too far from the Ohio State campus. They have donated or supported over $30 million in research, the creation of new centers, scholarships, faculty endowments over those 20 years. So ideally, the office focuses on those kinds of strategic partnerships, large corporations, but small companies get support and referral as needed. They just don't have the resources to kind of move it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's a great question. Kind of like large center grants, you know, like we provide more proposal development services for those sorts of initiatives than we do for like a single PI proposal. Caroline, what is that backdrop behind me? That's magnificent. It almost looks like something interplanetary.
That's hilarious. Jeff, thanks for this talk. This is amazing. This is the ceiling of a sea cave in northern Wisconsin, the Apostle Islands. Anyway, it looks incredible. So Zoom background. What can I say? I wanted to ask a question though. I see that Leah came off of mute and I feel like your question might be more organized than mine. Mine was going to be a bit of a ramble. So if you want to go first, by all means. She's shaking her head. You know, you stress this notion of what companies want and strategic conversations with companies about what they need and what they want. What happens when what they need and what they want isn't feasible or doesn't make sense, or you can't find partnerships, or like what do the pain points or the misalignment points look like? Where does it get tough for you in trying to meet those needs and have those conversations?
I mean, you know, like a great example would be like affinity agreements. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So Coca-Cola has an exclusive license. It's only Coca-Cola products at like sporting events and stuff like that. Some companies will approach us because of a procurement relationship that they want to establish. So they're like, we want you to sell our product and only our product. And there has to be, that's a great example of, there has to be a benefit to the institution, right? If we're going to give them exclusive rights, they need to be showing some love to the institute. Like you need to be supporting scholarships, endowing a professor, whatever it is. And I'm not saying there's a list or anything, but we have to come to some kind of agreement. That's probably where the pain point is, because companies just think, hey, I'm going to give you a discount. And then that's it. I'll give you a great example. All of you know about like PeopleSoft and now Workday and Banner and SAP. When we analyzed who we spent the most money with, when we looked at all the procurement relationship, you want to guess which one? It was PeopleSoft. We were spending the most money with them year over year over year. And they were doing nothing in terms of internships, opportunities for students, supporting in the arts, whatever it was. Like they had absolutely nothing going on. So it's a great example of if the company doesn't want to collaborate for what we say, our phrase is collaborate for impact. If they're not interested in that, then we're not either. And so it has to be a kind of a win-win. Now, PeopleSoft was something we were locked into for X number of years, so you didn't really have a choice. But it does question when they negotiated the contract with Workday, did that come up, right? Like, because OSU's just transitioned to that. I don't know the answer to that, because affinity agreements, to be honest, we would refer those on. The office I'm with, corporate partnerships, there's an office specifically for affinity agreements. It's very legal, as you can imagine, right? Yeah. Hopefully that answers the question. Otherwise, I think if a company asks for something that's outrageous, we try to get them to get to some place that's acceptable. Like, we don't do that for anyone else. I'm not sure that would be something that the university could support. How about X, Y, and Z? Unfortunately, if it means anything, we probably work with over 100 companies at any given time. Some are certainly front burner and some are back burner, meaning like an agreement's been signed and things are kind of on autopilot. But actively courting new companies all the time to kind of grow the capacity. Leah, did you want to take on that?
Yeah, I think it was just a wondering, we also have an office for corporate development within our research office, along with our research development office. And but in a lot of ways, except for maybe at the highest levels of leadership, they're kind of in their separate lanes. And I guess I was wondering about, since you brought strategic doing with you as a tool,
Yep.
that is a tool that you've used extensively within research development, whether like bringing that tool with you kind of was helped at all bridging between those two worlds. I don't know, maybe Ohio has just always been more integrated.
Well, it looks that way.
I'm
doesn't it?
curious.
I don't know
about
that. Yeah, I don't know that it is. What I can say is I'm funded on a grant through the Ohio Department of Higher Ed, and actually one of the aims of our grant is to use strategic doing to engage sort of an advisory board for the Ohio Innovation Exchange. So this is, to give you an example, is we know that for the Innovation Exchange to be viable long-term, we probably need state government, NGOs, private employers, university partners, like we need them all in the same room talking about what the value of that is and what the future should be. Like what are the features and functions of the future should look like. So my focus this next year is really all about sustainability, and our intention is to use strategic doing to guide that conversation, to bring those people together and talk about that. There, to some degree, when we work with corporate partners, a lot of it may not be strategic doing in like the generic, in the definition of the word, but when our corporate partners are working, I'm not sure if I'm giving the right word. So my colleagues, when they're working with companies, it's very much a strategy conversation. Tell us what your needs are. You have to dig a little bit sometimes with companies because they want to go with the most basic thing. I'll give you a great example. There's a company called Nationwide Insurance that you've probably heard of. They are headquartered here in Columbus. Their founding was in the farming community. That's where they insured things the most. It isn't necessarily where they are today, but that was like a big part of who they are. They have recently signed a partnership agreement with Ohio State to invest in research and innovation for an ag and technical innovation hub. So basically trying to create new industries around agriculture and technology. The goal of that is to grow new customers. They see what's on the horizon. They see farmers getting more and more technically astute. I mean, some of you know that you can like now send drones out into the field to find and eradicate weeds. There are combines that you can set on autonomous settings and will do some of the work. So they're trying to build an innovation and technology hub around agriculture that will service new clients, new customers in the future. Kind of fun stuff, right? Just all these possibilities about where everything's going. And the companies, their agenda is very different than it's not different than higher ed, it's just a different timeline. Right? They want to do research and innovation, but they want it to be use inspired and ready to go. I in some ways, you guys are patient to let me just babble on, but I will say that with my experience working in the research enterprise and the proposal development office and strategic doing, I see value in all of those things, and I feel like I bring all of that when I'm trying to get stuff done. In some ways, some of my colleagues don't have that. They don't have that research experience. They're great relationship managers, but they may not have had that research experience, so they may struggle sometimes with the disciplinary things. Yeah, it'd be a great career path for any of you because you're all connected to the academic mission and the research mission, so you know how to make those partnerships happen. Thanks for sharing links to everybody's corporate partnerships office. I see another scale question from Christine. Question is about our organizational unit seems powerful. You know, it has been powerful because the current research leader and president of the university were very much aligned with this idea of corporate partnerships. Unfortunately, both our president and our executive vice chancellor for research are transitioning. They're moving on. One of them has already left the institution. So I don't think that the board of trustees is going to choose someone that somehow doesn't value industry partnerships, but it has been a really great, like those individuals actually participate in a lot of the meetings with like senior level folks. You know, and the second part of your question was, you mentioned being grant funded. How many state funded positions do you have in your office? Yeah, so for the innovation exchange, I'm the only full-time person funded on the grant. We have several other part-time things going on. So for that particular thing, and then the rest of my team, the corporate partnerships team, all of them are full-time staff paid for by the university. Is there a viable core of people? And if you're talking about the innovation exchange, Christine, or are you talking about the partnership office or both?
I think kind of both. You're giving me maybe more credit than I deserve for the nuance in my question, but I was just curious, how many people does it take to make it possible? Like, not that everyone has access to a Jeff at their university, but because you do have like this mixture, but it seems really powerful. And I wonder how, you know, if we were to make the case tomorrow that we should have one at our university, any of us, what would be the minimum thing we would have to have for it to be viable?
And you're talking about the innovation exchange tool? Yeah, primarily. Yeah. So yeah, we're kind of it's hard to say like number FTDs, but let me just say, like standing it up the first time, the vendors will work with you to do most of that. So we work with Symplectic Elements, which is a digital science product. There's many other products out there, but that's who we chose to work with. The automation of the tool has changed so much. It really is remarkable how quickly you can do it now. Just to give me an idea, if you just loaded in names and email addresses for people and department that they're from, the system will through an API, will auto-populate their researcher IDs like ORCID, Web of Science, Scopus. It'll load them on their own. So that automates the curation of publications from there. And then there's other parts to a profile, like their picture, their bio, that has to be done somehow manually. So some of you are nodding, you've probably done all this. I have been on this project since 2015. I've either been a free resource, a cost share resource, or 10% of my effort. It's only in the last year that I've been 100%. Everyone else has been a loaned resource. I would say that if you have a technology unit, like a data analyst kind of resource, it would be like 1%, like 100% of their effort, perhaps the first 6 months, but then they could drop down to like 25%. The tools are really remarkable. Now, the other thing I'm not saying is you can't just build it and it works. You have to like market it, promote it, manage it, look for ways to get people to use it, make sure it's in front of them all the time. that's the piece that is probably a lot more time consuming, like any technology tool, right? To give you a concrete example, we went from like less than 200 LinkedIn followers for the Innovation Exchange to now over 1,200. And we did that in just a few months. But that's because I had the capacity to work on that, like figure out ways to grow our followers. And that's driving different kinds of eyes and ears to the site than what was in existence. And then I'll just say this, I don't really think our faculty use it. I don't even know that they know it's there, but we know that they're being found and that people are finding them and connecting. Yeah. I'd be glad if anyone has any questions after today. Let me just put in chat. Thanks so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been wonderful.
Great. My email's in chat in case anyone wants to follow up. But yeah, I think it's a really neat opportunity for your role to kind of interface.
Jeff, could I, in the last 30 seconds, can I ask you to elaborate a little bit on the faculty involvement?
Sure.
Because we use experts, and I think the impetus is similar, right? To make it easy to find work out of our university, but you know, many faculty don't take the time to do their profiles, right? So
yeah,
is that really needed? I mean, what's your perspective on
I
how
mean,
much
that's
faculty
like,
involvement?
yeah, what I would say, like, that's ideal. If they take some ownership of their profile and they really like manage it, that's a really great thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say we've given up. It's just not our focus. Our
Right.
focus is we're going to make them discoverable. And maybe it's a basic profile, but it's more than enough for business and industry's needs, right? Or for the purposes of internal business operations like proposal teams, industry partnerships, whatever, tech licensing. Like if you can find someone and see what they're doing, you can use the tool.
Yeah.
What I would say, the campuses that have a better utility of it or uptake is the ones where it's combined with like promotion and tenure. But our experience,
that's a pretty good carrot.
yeah. Our experience at Ohio State that made that not work so well is if you're a full professor already, then you're not motivated to use the system at all. And if you're already like associate with tenure, then you're kind of like arrived. So you're not going to spend time on it. So you like end up missing a big chunk of people. So you really only benefit from that assistant professor level who haven't gotten tenure yet. I will say this, the more that I showcase successes, the more the faculty have that FOMO, that fear of missing out, right? I don't want to go too much over. Could I tell you one quick story? Do you have 2 seconds? So there's a professor that ran another webinar series called Corrosion Zoom. And he also had his profile exploded during the pandemic because people were looking him up. He was running an international symposium series, all virtual, on corrosion science. So his area of research is everything from a Campbell soup can to like a nuclear reactor. You know, it's a great soundbite, right? Like that range of stuff. We showed him that his profile had gotten X number of hits, and he was like, I don't even know this thing exists. I don't even believe that this is happening. And thank God I had someone on the call from the Ohio Department of Higher Ed. So it wasn't me anymore saying anything. It was the Ohio Department of Ed saying, Professor, your profile is among the top 1%. These are actual hits from across the globe. So finally he said, okay, I guess it was worth my energy and effort to work my profile, but I am probably the only faculty member in my department that took any time to manage my profile. So he said where this could be most helpful is the up and coming faculty. If they could see the impact it has, then they're more likely to take the time and put a little energy into it. To be fair, you know, probably Jeremy, it's like 10 minutes to update your profile. It's not some huge
It's really quick.
Yeah. You upload your bio, you make sure some keywords are there, you put a photo in. If you have any social media links like to LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. It really is like 10 minutes to do all this. Couldn't be easier. So we've just sort of, what's the word? We've just sort of resigned ourselves that that's not our priority. That's up to the faculty, the individual. I will tell you this, University of Akron, instead of profiling every single one of their faculty, they focused on their Polymer Science Institute, which is internationally renowned, right? They put backlinks to the profiles from their department and college pages. And because of that, we can see the traffic that's being generated from Akron's website to the Innovation Exchange. And that little effort, which is really not, again, not a big deal, that boosts the search engine optimization, it re-indexes Google, it makes them even more discoverable. So the more places they are found through trusted sources, the more impact. So I don't know, you might check on your campus and see if you have a research impact librarian. We have
We
one of
do,
them.
yeah. I work with
Okay.
her occasionally.
They can be really, really helpful in getting that message out. Like, how can you manage your online presence? What can you do to kind of advance your,
Right.
yeah. And that,
Yeah, I do know anecdotally the one college on campus that the dean sort of made it mandatory for folks to do their experts profiles. I don't know what the enforcement mechanism is, but that college, of course, has the best set of profiles anywhere on the university.
so what you want to do is like push that, like get that out there so they see the FOMO effect of like, look what we're missing out on. And it really does. I believe that makes a difference.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was so much fun. Carolina loved the roof of the cave. I want to go there now. Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again, Jeff, and thanks for everyone for joining. All right.
Appreciate it. Yep. Christine, it's great to see you. Oh,
Great
yeah.
to see you too.
Apostle